Howdy everyone, it's Sam. Welcome to the Wobble Enjoy Sports channel. If you're new around here, hope I can get you to consider liking the content and subscribing to the channel. But if you are a regular around these here parts, thank you very much for the continuous support. I think it is starting to become a little bit clearer in the NRLW who is fair dinkum and who's not. Got myself 3 tips correct out of a possible 5 this past weekend. Let's get stuck straight into the next round. Round 5 of the 2023 NRLW season kicks off on Saturday with a double header from Net Strata Jubilee Stadium in Kogarah. The Parramatta Eels host the North Queensland Cowboys, and on sportsbet.com.au, the Eels are outsiders at $2.35, whereas the North Queensland Cowboys women's team are at $1.60. This, unfortunately, is a battle of a battle of the wooden spoon as it currently stands. It's second last versus last. The North Queensland Cowboys defensively, unfortunately, in their 2 home games, have leaked equal most points ever scored in an NRLW game. The score or the record is 40 points, and they've done that twice in both of their home games. So not good defense from the North Queensland Cowboys, which is rather surprising in a couple of different ways. One of which is because the Mackay Cutters from the Queensland Cup earlier this year, or the BMD Premiership, they were a better defensive unit than that, and a lot of these women have come from that system. And then for the Parramatta Eels, it's just a really hard luck, tough, unlucky story for them in 2023. Much the same as the men's team, but staying on the women's team, they've played tough. I think only twice the scoreline truly reflects how much they were not in the contest, because in every other game, whether they've been like they've only lost 1-12 or 13 plus, I think they've been in a majority of their games this season. Have the Parramatta Eels. They've been really gritty in every single one of their games, and they nearly came back from the dead to put a real scare up the arse of the Canberra Raiders this past weekend, going down 28 points to 22. And again, I said it last week, but I really want to emphasize the fact that Abby Church is just a sensation at fullback for the Parramatta Eels. Let's get into the team list news. At fullback for the Parramatta Eels is the aforementioned Abby Church. Faye and Donovan are the wingers for the Eels, and Hunt and Tohi Hiku are the centres. The halves pairing, Berryman, Duff and Pearson. The forward pack, O'Neill, Cherrington, Amiatu, Murphy and Fonua are the back row. And then the interchanges, Payakal, Kapua, Muru and Nikita Davis Welsh. They are the Parramatta Eels side. Shifting focus to the North Queensland Cowboys now, Francesca Goldthorpe is the fullback. The wingers, Vitalina Nakore and Crystal Blackwell. Crystal Blackwell, predominantly, from what I've read, from what I've studied, is predominantly a halves player, but she's playing out there on the wing this weekend. So let's see how she rocks and rolls. And I thought Nakore was missed so much against the Cronulla Sutherland Sharks last weekend. Fantastic to see her back, even though it is a forced change. Autumn Rain Stevens-Daly did her ACL last weekend, so the best of wishes to a speedy, smooth, swift recovery for Miss Stevens-Daly. That sucks. And I thought she provided a lot of maturity and talent and experience to the side when she did come into the squad, or the 1-17 game day team. Going into the centres now, Peters and Shelley Long return. Maya Middleton has been dropped down into the reserves, and Jasmine Peters, arguably so far our best or most potent strike weapon for 2023. The halves pairing, Tillett and Dibb. The forward pack, Harden, Mantleman and Mackenzie Wheel has been shifted from the lock into the front row position now. And just quietly, once again, Emma Mantleman in a big loss to the Cronulla Sharks last weekend. There were just these moments by Emma Manselman that remind everyone or put the fear of God into everyone to let everyone know that Emma Manselman is a fair dinkum talent, an absolute diamond. So she's just exceptional. The back row, Bree Chester, Tiana Ruffstrand-Smith starts in the lock, and good and bad news here. The bad news is that Shania Power is also out for the rest of the season. Oh my God. I believe it is a foot injury. She usually wears number 12 on her back. Coming in for her is a lady you may have heard me speak about, a very young lady who you may have heard me wax lyrical over. Her name is Libby Sura, and she made her Queensland under-19s State of Origin debut earlier this season. She scored a try in that game. She's been rocking and rolling for the Mackay Cutters this season as well. I so like the look of this young lady. She's playing in the second row. That is a position that I have yet to see her play in. But boy, howdy, I don't doubt her for a second. I am so excited to see Libby Sura go around and get into her work this weekend. And then the interchange bench uh, for the North Queensland Cowboys, Jataya Faifua is in the number 14 position. So don't know if Emma Mantelman will play the full 80 minutes in the hooker position, or if Faifua will come in and give a 10-15 minute spell to Emma Mantelman. Then you've got Jessica Reeves, who has hit the ground running since her debut. Papua New Guinean international. She is absolutely tearing it apart. China Palata shifted down into the interchange bench. She's been winger, she's been forward. So I do feel kind of sorry for her. And then April Natapuna starts in jersey number 17 as well. And then just going to the reserves for the Cowboys, Muka, Middleton, Koroi, Rocco Onu, and S.A. Banu. Unfortunately, yeah, Sarah Koroi getting dropped down to the reserves. I don't know if that was warranted. I think she's been one of our heavier hitters in 2023. This game scares the crap out of me. You don't want to lose to the last placed Parramatta Eels side, who have not won a game all friggin' season. They're going to be tough, but both of the Cowboys' wins in 2023 have come on the road, and they're on the road again down at Cogra. So come on, North Queensland Cowboys, go down and get the dub, and come back home next week and get a win and not like 40 just quietly. And the second game on Super Saturday from Netstrata Jubilee Stadium does feature the St. George Illawarra Dragons, and they are hosting the Gold Coast Titans on Sportsbet. The Dragons, though, are $2.05 outsiders, and the Gold Coast Titans are $1.77. And the Titans, I think they well and truly came back crashing down to planet Earth when they got spanked by the Sydney Roosters this past weekend. Yeah, now the time is nigh. This is the game, the most important game in the Titans season, coming up against the Dragons away from home. Maybe the form is a false dawn. Maybe they've just hit some sort of mid-season slump, but this is the most critical game for the Gold Coast Titans in 2023 for sure. For the St. George Illawarra Dragons, though, I felt like they could have done it, but I didn't tip them. But they freaking did it last weekend against the West Tigers. Great character, but I do think that was more of a case of the West Tigers absolutely bottling it than the Dragons. Really, really clawing their way back properly. Like, it's pretty disrespectful, but like, I think the Tigers made so many areas and penalties, mistakes, that the Dragons, they just had to capitalize on it, and they did. Against the Gold Coast Titans side, though, who are dropping the pill like it's a hot potato, they could be afforded a fair few opportunities. So this is a real flip of the coin game. And already that value on the Dragons is already enticing me big time. So starting with the Dragons side, Berry, Vella, Brown, Bobby Law, she finished the game with crutches last weekend, and she's been named in the centres this weekend. superhuman fair income. And Shania Lindell, Tyler Nathan Wong, and Racine McGregor are the halves pairing. And then the forward pack, Tiakaranga Katoa, Sophie Clancy in the hooker position, and McGrath West round out the front row. And in the back row, Costa, Bright, and Taniai. And Taniai, whoa, great game from her. I really like Ella Costa as well. There's a couple of really nice players for the Dragons outfit. I'm looking forward to seeing a little bit more of this weekend. And then going into the interchange bench now, and we've got Hopkins, Cowan, Riordan, and Madison Weatherall for the St. George Illawarra Dragons. Shifting into the Gold Coast Titans now, that lady, Ivania Palete, is the fullback. Brown and Destiny Senapati are the wingers. Jamie Chapman returns from a huge, a huge concussion the week before, and Niall Williams Guthrie remains as the other centre. Kiriaratu and Sienna Lofipo remain as the halves pairing, and they've got like one of those two ladies have to be right up there for the rookie of the season. Like I know they've hit the skids, the whole team has over the past fortnight, but fair income, they've just been so impressive for how young they are. They've shown extreme leadership and maturity well beyond their years. Shannon Marto, Brown and Elliston, Canfield, Bent, and Georgia Hale. It's still such an impressive forward pack, isn't it? And then you go the interchange as well. Brayley Nati, Hancock, Ormond Monsell, and Laker Clark. It's such a good side on paper. This is a really difficult game to tip, though. The Dragons, they've been in the game against the Canberra Raiders, and they lost that game in Golden Point, and then they were in that game against the Tigers, and they finally got into it. But if the Titans actually, if there'd be fair income this season, this is it. I'm going to tip the Gold Coast Titans because I think they've got to be desperate this weekend against the Dragons side. But this Dragons unit, they are a committed team. Jamie Sauer, the head coach of the Dragons, there's just snippets. There's little moments where it's like, wow, that if you can develop that sort of team unity over the next couple of seasons, this Dragon side is going to go deep. I just think it's growing pains this year. They still could play the top four. They still could play finals, but against this Gold Coast Titans side, that team on paper, it's undeniable just about on week to week basis. So Gold Coast Titans win this game 1-12, but not with a whole lot of confidence. Now, the third game on Super Saturday emanates from Allianz Stadium. The Sydney Roosters host the West Tigers, and on Sportsbet, the Roosters are $1.18 favourites. The Tigers are sitting at $5 outsiders. I think that's a little bit of disrespect on the West Tigers. I don't know if I'm tempted enough to take it just yet. I've got to get into the team list, but this Tigers side, they're still a great defensive outfit, and that defense needs to be on show this weekend. So going into the team list for the Sydney Roosters, the home side, we've got Corbin Baxter, Bridie Parker, Surgis, Kelly, Mywood, Taryn Aitken, and Jocelyn Kelleher. Going into the forward pack for the Roosters, Boyle, Davis, Maya Hilmawana returns to a starting position. Atessa Paule, Olivia Koenig, and Keely Joseph. And then the interchange reads Burton, Fotu Mawala, Hopawate, and Pasakala. Unfortunately, Jamie Frezard is out, which is why it seems like Bridie Parker is in for the Sydney Roosters. Now going into the team list for the West Tigers against the Dragons last weekend. I said it before, the Tigers just shot themselves in the foot. They were up at halftime. They looked really strong. They lost the week before to the Cowboys. They played that first half, and you thought, right, here we go, West Tigers. But they came out in that second half and did absolutely no favors for anybody in that game, especially themselves, which is why they lost the game. So Bo Vetti Welsh is the fullback, Jakai Whitfield and Josie Lenaz are the wingers. Horn and Tafanga are the centres, and Pale Rasabale and Lutu are the halves combinations. So Lutu returning from an injury. I wonder where Miss Curtin is. So going into the forward pack for the Tigers now, Togatuki, Pryor, Pio, Apps, Salata, and Nevada George. So Sophie Curtin is in there in jersey 14, Imogen Gobran, and Jessica Kennedy, and Tess Staines in jersey number 17. Yeah, this is a battle between two of maybe the four best defensive sides in the competition at the moment. Maybe it's first versus second. Um, yeah, it's undeniable in the end. You've got to tip the Sydney Roosters. It's like the Gold Coast Titans, but this Tigers outfit. If there's an upset this weekend, this could be it. I think $5. I can't blame you if you decide to take the $5 this weekend about the Tigers. They've been good. They've been a good team this year. Had a bit of an aberration last weekend, but the hit back, the fight back factor is going to be fair dinkum about the Tigers, I reckon, to the point where I think this will be a 1-12 scoreline, but the Roosters will get the dub in the end. Shifting into Sunday football now and kickoff from midday at Totally Workwear Stadium. The Brisbane Broncos host the Canberra Raiders. On Sportsbet, the Broncos are $1.45 favourites. The Raiders are $2.75. And once again, that is pretty juicy odds about the Canberra Raiders. And I think the Canberra Raiders, I think there's just their second halves over the past fortnight just starting to slip a bit. I think they need to improve their second halves to take on this Brisbane Broncos side, who I think had their best performance of the season last week. It wasn't the game against the Newcastle Knights for the Brisbane Broncos last weekend. It was a cracking game, right? But it wasn't perfect. There was still a fair chunk of errors from both sides. Brisbane Broncos were just unlucky in the end, man. Just discipline really killed them in the end. It was a really even contest. Great game of footy. But I do think too many errors were still evident from both of those sides. And Brisbane Broncos are going to take a hell of a lot out of that game, which makes, I think, I mean, this Sunday doubleheader is massive in the NRLW. This is a great two fixtures to look forward to, and this is arguably the game of the round. So going into the Brisbane Broncos lineup, Maddock, Robinson, Hufanga, Shizolka, Dam, Broughton, and Brigginshaw. The forward pack, Nuasala, Brill, Clark, Gray, Teitzel, and Denman. And didn't Mariah Denman have an absolute wower of a game against the Newcastle Knights? And then going into the interchange is Gould, Lafayette, Lenarduzzi, and Fogafini. Shifting into the Canberra Raiders now, Appy Nichols, Bartlett, Robbins Retty, Dumit, Tangai, Zahara Temera, and Ashley Quinlan. And then going into the forward pack, Kemp, Temera, Hollyman, Elise Smith, Holly Mae Dodd, and Samaima Taufa. And then interchange reads Ravu, Ingram, Matua, and Tara Ranke. So Kelly Signs is out with an injury. And then you look at the Brisbane Broncos lineup, Ashley Werner and Eels are out as well. And Holly Mae Dodd is a massive inclusion for the Canberra Raiders for sure. That's a real welcome back for the Canberra Raiders. And then just looking at the reserves list there was Mackenzie Wiki in the reserves. So possibly a late inclusion for this cracking fixture. It is a true flip of the coin. Canberra Raiders, as I said before, their second halves, they need to improve on. They need to come out with a bit more energy. And the Brisbane Broncos, they're just a bit of a sloppy team at the moment. Like, they're playing good footy, but I just doubt if they've got that extra gear in them to 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 go deep into finals footy or to even make finals footy, such as the tightness of the competition and just the allocation being only 4 slots for September footy. But they're going to be there in Brisbane. This game is, Broncos and Raiders. Have the Raiders travelled to Queensland yet in 2023? I don't think they have. So this is the Raiders' first trip to the Sunshine State. I think the Broncos are going to learn a hell of a lot about themselves. I'm I'm gonna dodge the value on the Raiders, and I'm gonna tip the Brisbane Broncos, but I think this is gonna be a cracker. And if that wasn't the game of the round, this one very well might be. This is the final game of round number 5. The Newcastle Knights host the Cronulla Sharks, and on Sportsbet, the Knights are $1.54 favourites. The Sharks are $2.50 outsiders. Going straight into the team list news for the Newcastle Knights, we've got Upton, Gallagher, Parker, Roach, Strange, Georgia Roach, and Jesse Southwell. Romanak, Higgins, Caitlin Johnston shifts from the second row back into the front row this weekend. Albert Jones, Clydesdale, Hannah Southwell returns this weekend after having last week off with an injury. Then the interchange reads Maynard, Kia, Tenel, and Taylor Predabon. So the outs are Rima Butler, and Simone Kapani are out for the Newcastle Knights. Rima Butler's a big loss. Rima Butler is a big loss for the Newcastle Knights. And then shifting into the Cronulla Sutherland Sharks team news, it looks like that they are unchanged. They are unchanged 1-17. The team that flogged the North Queensland Cowboys last weekend. Said it just a second ago, I'll say it again. The Newcastle Knights, they're doing things at a better level than the Brisbane Broncos are. There's no doubt about that. But they're playing sloppily. And I think if they continue to play sloppy, they're going to be found out on an upset day. Meanwhile, the Cronulla Sutherland Sharks, I mean, how can you actually tell what the hell they're going to do on a week-to-week basis, let alone like a one half of football to a second half of footy? You just don't friggin' know. But then again, they did produce their most consistent, best 70 minutes of football this season last weekend. So I don't know how the travel's going to treat them too, going from Shark Park up to Townsville and then back down to Newcastle as well. Whereas Newcastle, 2 home games in a row now. It's fraught with danger. It's fraught with danger, this one. I do want. I'm leaning towards Newcastle. I do want to tip them, but I don't know, man. Is Jada Taylor for the Cronulla Sharks? Is she truly that good? I mean, they're undefeated. They're 2-2 with Jada Taylor in the squad. So does she just provide enough breathing room, enough clarity for Emma Tonegado to absolutely seek and destroy uh, Jada Taylor? Didn't she make a massive difference last weekend? You got to tip an upset every week, don't you? And I'm leaning towards the Cronulla Sharks. I'm leaning towards the Cronulla Sharks now. Bugger it. Fingers crossed. He's hoping that the Cronulla Sharks get it done. Otherwise, I'm calling up the Rugby League Outlaws in Dan and Terry asking what's for and what's doing. So I'm going to tip the Cronulla Sharks in this game. Yo, that's it for me, guys. Thank you very much for the continued support. And apologies about this weekend. I've just been north, south, east, and west, all corners of the compass this weekend. But expect another video from me in the not too distant future. Have a very nice weekend. Hope your team wins, except for the Parramatta Eels. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you. Take care. Adios.